The following program is brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg and the Catholic Communication Campaign. Visit us on the web at hbgdiocese.org.
Franciscan Media and this local station present American Catholic Radio, Disciples Called to Witness. And now, here's our host.
Welcome to American Catholic Radio presents Disciples Called to Witness, a program designed to help you know your faith so you can grow in your faith and share it. I'm your host, Judy Zarek. When my husband and I talk about what we want to do on the weekends, a lot of times the first thing I think of is, how about dinner and a show? Cooking isn't my favorite activity, so I love to have other people cook for me. And I like to be entertained and given things to think about when I go to a movie or a show. When I learn things through storytelling, I seem to be able to retain the message better than if I just hear it as a speech or a talk. What's your favorite movie or show? Well, one of my all-time favorites is Les Miserables. It came out recently as a filmed movie musical, but I prefer the live theater version. I love the themes of sacrifice and redemption that run throughout the plot. It follows the struggles, sorrows, and joys of a simple man throughout his life. He's not necessarily a religious man, but spiritual themes resonate in this story. This particular play reminds me of just how effective stories can be in helping us understand our own lives. Our guest today on Sharing Faith tells us why he's found that evangelizing with live theater can be a powerful witness. Well, it only makes sense. Jesus used stories and parables to teach us about the kingdom of God. Why not employ those same methods today? And Jesus used another symbol everyone could identify with, the task of eating, to help teach us about the mystery of the Eucharist, about family, and so much more. Our Discovering Faith guest, Chef Robin Davis, will demonstrate to us how God uses people and some really good meals to bring us into closer relationship with Him and others. Today on ACR, we're all about showing you how people are living out their commitment to the Christian life in a variety of ways. First up, you'll hear from Father Mike Mayer. He's putting his love for theater to good use by helping to bring together as many Catholic and Christian theater groups as he can. And Bishop Sam Jacobs from Houma Thibodaux, Louisiana, will be with us to give us some of his great insight into how we can be better disciples and witnesses to others. Also on today's show, in our Discovering Faith interview, producer John Feaster speaks with Robin Davis. Robin has had quite a journey to the Catholic Church, one that, interestingly enough, has been impacted quite a bit through that everyday activity of eating. She never predicted that her job as a food critic and chef would help her to connect with her 3 new stepchildren. It's a great story you'll want to hear. We have a terrific show for you today, so let's get started and see if you can guess this week's Saint of the Week.
Who am I? From slavery to canonization. That's one way to summarize my life, its depths and heights. But every life, yours, mine, is made up of in-between moments as well. I was born in Sudan around 1870. As a youngster, I was moved by the beauty of the natural world and often wondered who could be the master of it all. But such dreamy thoughts were cut short by the time I was 7. I was kidnapped by slave traders, given a new name, sold in a public market, and resold several more times. How can I describe the horrors and humiliations I suffered, including beatings and mutilation? One of my owners branded me with more than 100 razor cuts. Eventually, I was sold to a public servant who turned me over to a family that moved to Italy and employed me there as a nanny. None of us knew then that slavery was illegal in Italy, so I continued to work for them. Truthfully, the family treated me with kindness, and as it turns out, assigned me a task that changed my life. The responsibility of accompanying their daughter to religious education classes at a facility run by the Canossian Daughters of Charity. I was to sit and wait while the young girl received instruction, but it seems I was being instructed as well. Everything I heard, saw, and experienced drew me to the faith and the sisters themselves. When the family for whom I was working returned to Africa, an Italian judge ruled that I was free to stay in Italy as a free woman. It didn't hurt that I had the support of the Patriarch of Venice, who later became Pope Pius X. In the early 1890s, following my baptism and confirmation, The Canossian sisters welcomed me into the novitiate. I was assigned to various convents in Italy. I was known for my gentle presence and my willingness to undertake any task. Most often I worked quietly as a cook, seamstress, and doorkeeper. Oh, I loved my work, my new life. But God had one more thing in mind for me. A biography was published about me in 1930, and I became a speaker and fundraiser for my community. Me, shy, uneducated, a former slave. The name I was given by the slave traders so many years before can be translated to mean fortunate one. God was with me through it all. I contracted pneumonia and died in 1947. In 2000, Pope John Paul II canonized me, calling me a shining advocate of genuine emancipation. Who am I? I am St. Josephine Bakhita.
Studies show that people who pray regularly and practice their faith are healthier and happier. I'm Bishop Ronald Gaynor. I want to invite you to experience a positive difference in your life by visiting your Catholic parish and encountering Jesus through the sacraments. Do it for your family, do it for yourself, and come home. Remember that God's mercy is and always will be there for you, no matter what your situation. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org to find a parish near you.
Everyone said it was okay.
I had a life.
They said it was a choice.
I was looking outside for answers.
I didn't want to mess it all up.
It wasn't the real me that went that day.
The life I had, it's gone.
Something inside dies after an abortion. If you're suffering because of an abortion, you may feel alone, but you're not. There are people who understand and can help. Call 888-456-HOPE. 888-456-HOPE. A message from Project Rachel.
You're listening to American Catholic Radio presents Disciples Called to Witness. Our Catholic faith must be reflected in our everyday lives if we hope to evangelize others. In our Sharing Faith segment up next, I'll introduce you to someone who is willing to communicate and witness that faith. Father Mike Mayer is a full-time parish priest in the Diocese of Rochester, New York. You'd think that leading a parish would take all of his time and then some, but Father Mike finds time for both his vocation and his avocation, which is the theater. Growing up, he'd always had a love for theater and playwriting, and in 2010, he was allowed to go on a sabbatical focusing in theater.
There is Catholic theater around the country, but nothing really to pull it together. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to step in and see if I could be of help to facilitate that. There are groups already. We have, as I say, Kevin O'Brien. We got the two theaters in New York City. Leonardo de Filippis' organization. He goes around. There's a group out of, I think, San Jose, California called Quo Vadis Theater. Mm-hmm. The Chesterton Theater. There are specifically Catholic theaters. And then, of course, there's a huge number of Christian theaters. I think what we're trying to do would also appeal to other Christian groups.
Father Mike sees the benefit in using live theater as a way to proclaim the gospel message.
There's something about live performance that you can't get from a television show. But I think the live certainly, may get people thinking and get people more engaged because it's right there. It's visceral. You're hearing the actor, you're looking at the actor. It's just a more visceral sense of communication there. Peter Cameron, in his article that I have on the website, talks about how good theater goes to the heart of the human condition. Great theater, and I think if you look at theater throughout the ages in all different cultures, it's trying to deal with the basic human questions about the human condition. Why is it, as Paul says, I want to do the good, but I do the bad? And what's the struggle? How can theater show a light on that and give some insight so that we can sort of see ourselves, understand what's going on, and get a better grasp then on what we need to do in order to follow Christ faithfully.
Faith Performances isn't a theater company itself, but a tool in which Father Mike would like to bring together and encourage Christian-based theater.
Last year, I thought to myself, well, I don't have all these contacts with Catholic playwrights, but I had seen some work of Kevin O'Brien, who does Theater of the Word Incorporated out of St. Louis. And there are some other Catholic theaters around the country. So I thought, well, why don't I just get in touch with Catholic theaters and Catholic actors and directors and see if they would want to come together to talk about Catholic theater and eventually do a Catholic theater festival each year. Doing a festival that brings together people and showcases the work in terms of evangelization.
This July, Father Mike is hosting a festival in New York that he calls Performing Our Faith, the Gift of Catholic Theater.
This year, we'll be doing just a one-act, basically 30-minute max play competition. And again, focusing on Christian understanding of the world. But in the future, we'd like to do maybe a full play, one acts, different types, maybe radio dramas, whatever, to encourage people to write for theater or all other media, certainly. Down the road, to be a nonprofit organization, it's kind of a clearinghouse of Catholic theater where people are in touch with one another and coming together each year to do some kind of a festival to show what they're doing.
Father Mike wants to see the commitment to a Christian way of life mirrored in the writing and producing of good theater. He wants to help that avenue of evangelization gain a bigger hold in our secularized culture. His vision is to bring people together who share the same goals and mission.
They see their mission as promoting the gospel, to make specifically Catholic theater or theater that's done by Catholics that goes to the heart of our faith journey to help people sort of see themselves in a different way, to consciously write with the idea of how are we going to break open the human condition, how are we going to break open the gospel message, how are we going to get that out to the people in ways that really engage them and make them think about their journey.
Father Mike Mayer believes that theater can help us to look into the mirror of truth in order that we might walk with conviction in the gospel way of life. If all of our entertainment did that, I truly believe we'd be living in a much different world. You can learn more about Father Mike's organization at www.faithperformances.com. For Sharing Faith, I'm Judy Zarek. Our United States Conference of Catholic Bishops is helping to guide us in the call to the new evangelization. They invite us all into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ and His Church. This week, producer Sharon Cross talks with Bishop Sam Jacobs from the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux, Louisiana. They'll talk about our commitment to be witnesses in our Christian life to those around us.
We're speaking with Bishop Sam Jacobs of the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux in Louisiana. Welcome, Bishop Jacobs.
Thank you.
We want to talk a little bit about the Disciples Call to Witness document. And one of the things that it encourages the faithful to do is to embrace a commitment to the Christian life. Can you give us an idea of what would a commitment to the Christian life look like for an American in the 21st century?
Well, I think it's one who has a deep love for Jesus Christ and a deep commitment to living that life of Christ in the fullest way possible, where people's faith is obvious through the celebration of the Eucharist, through their prayer life, through their reaching out to in service to others, through works of charity, et cetera, that somehow or another that Christian life that's embraced and lived and witnessed can become an instrument to other people, seeing that life may be drawn closer to Christ.
You know, I can imagine somebody saying, I try to go to church every week and I try to give to charities or, work at soup kitchens or whatever, but I'm not really sure I love Jesus. How is it doing those things? Does the love come first, or is it the doing of the things that helps? That comes first?
Is the chicken or the egg?
Yes.
All right. I think both are important. I think when you fall in love.
Yes.
I mean, when you are in love with a person, you know it. Nobody has to tell you or ask the question, are you in love? They can see it. Well, when we fall in love with Christ, it's not doing things. It's not going through the motions. It's not doing a checklist. It's coming out of a life. And once we have that hunger for God, that the desire to grow more in holiness, the desire to respond to God's call to us, we can't do enough because we're compelled, as Paul says, we're compelled to love God. We're compelled to serve others. We're compelled to proclaim the gospel because of the love of Christ within us.
Sometimes loving Jesus or showing love for Jesus feels separate from loving people or showing our love for people. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's both ends. Jesus is saying, as long as you're doing an outreach or service and you're caring about that person, you're doing it for me, whether you recognize it or not. Because when did we see you? When did we do this for you? When at least you did it, at least my brothers you did to me. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is because of my love for Jesus, I began to do this. And I began to see Jesus in the other person. And I began to reach out and serve that person because that person is a representation of Jesus to me. So it's a both and. Sometimes I will be able to see Jesus. I will reach out and serve that person because I see Jesus in that person. I want to reach out because that's what Jesus tells me. The other times I'm doing this service, and I may not see Jesus in the other person, but Jesus says, I'm there. And whatever you did to the least, you did to me.
Studies show that people who pray regularly and practice their faith are healthier and happier. I'm Bishop Ronald Gaynor. I want to invite you to experience a positive difference in your life by visiting your Catholic parish and encountering Jesus through the sacraments. Do it for your family, do it for yourself, and come home. Remember that God's mercy is and always will be there for you, no matter what your situation. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org to find a parish near you.
Everyone said it was okay.
I had a life.
They said it was a choice.
I was looking outside for answers.
I didn't want to mess it all up.
It wasn't the real me that went that day.
The life I had, it's gone.
Something inside dies after an abortion. If you're suffering because of an abortion, you may feel alone, but you're not. There are people who understand and can help. Call 888-456-HOPE. 888-456-HOPE. A message from Project Rachel.
I love the fact that we're a faith that calls us to be in right relationship with one another, that calls us not just to obviously be people of faith, be people that that our relationship with God is, but that faith calls us to go out into the world and to minister to one another. That's something that very much motivates my work and motivates my sense of purpose in the world.
Next on American Catholic Radio, it's time for you to guess our Catholic treasure. What liturgical rite takes place within the Easter Sunday Mass? The answer is the renewal of our baptismal promises. Usually taking the place of the recitation of the Creed, the priest invites us to renew our baptismal promises immediately after the homily in all the Masses during the day on Easter Sunday. We renounce sin and Satan, the author of sin, and profess faith in God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and in the central truths of the faith in which we were all baptized. Then the priest moves throughout the church, sprinkling us with holy water that was blessed at the Easter Vigil the evening before. A hymn, usually recalling a baptismal theme, is sung during the sprinkling rite. The purpose of this ritual is to connect those attending other Easter liturgies with the Great Vigil, where the Church welcomes new members through the celebration of the sacraments of initiation, that is, baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist. All of us join with the newly initiated to renew our commitment to Christ, as we've been preparing to do throughout the season of Lent. While everyone in the parish is encouraged to be present at the Easter Vigil, realistically, not everyone can be there, and so our liturgy helps us all connect with the celebration of the Easter sacraments through this Catholic treasure, the Easter renewal of baptismal promises.
You're listening to American Catholic Radio presents Disciples Called to Witness. This week on Discovering Faith, producer John Feaster talks with Robin Davis. Robin was a restaurant critic and food writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. She was also assistant editor at Bon Appetit magazine. Since 2002, she's been the food editor at the Columbus Dispatch and the host of Dispatch Kitchen on Channel 10 in Columbus, Ohio. She's the author of several food-related books. Her latest, called Recipe for Joy, a stepmom's story of finding faith, following love, and feeding a family. She and John will talk about how she's found a unique way to commit to and live out her Christian life.
Robin, thanks for being with us today. And I know you've got a new book out, a book called Recipe for Joy, a stepmom's story of finding faith, following love, and feeding a family. You've kind of put it all together there. But what's most compelling to me in terms of what we're talking about in our show is your faith journey. Mm-hmm. And how do any of us find our, the right path for us, I guess. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you came into, this recipe for joy, your path as a Christian. Can you just talk to me about that a little bit?
My sister really says it best. She says to me that God whispers to most people, but he has to shout at me because I'm so stubborn and I don't listen. It's true. I had this great job in San Francisco, a city I loved, people I loved working with, and I left all of that to move to Columbus, Ohio, which, looking back, is probably the craziest thing I ever did. And I did it in part because my father had gotten sick and then he had passed away. My sister lived here, and I was just taking a break. But to move back here permanently was a really crazy thing to do. But what it ended up being was really a calling. I had walked away from religion, from spirituality, from God, after my mother had passed away many years before. Uh-huh. I was angry, why do I have to lose my mother? Then after my father died, I was definitely just lost. My job didn't hold the sparkle it once had. Yeah. So I moved back, and little by little, the things that I found in my life led me to a very deep understanding of God and of God's grace.
So God was somehow, as your sister says, yelling at you or whatever, but calling you for sure. How did you know God was calling you?
I knew God was calling me when I met my husband. I met him at a University of Dayton alumni event, and I found out quickly that his wife had passed away, the woman that he had met in college and had 3 children, and he was 36 years old, had this tragic loss and was now a single father. And when I met him, there was happiness in him, there was joy in him.
Wow.
And I looked at that and I said, my father died a year ago, and I have none of that. I have a beautiful career, and I have none of that.
And you're both basically the same age. You went to school together, and you're looking at someone else saying, what's different, huh?
Right. And someone who, you can measure losses however you want. We expect to lose parents. I don't think we expect to lose spouses and partners so young. And so his loss to me was much greater, and yet he was still happy and joyful and faith-filled, at 3 things that I was not.
So you must have said, how can I find this in my life, huh?
I did, and I asked that over and over of him, and then, of course, he kept saying, well, just pray about it. And so I started to, and little by little, God kept showing me the joy and the grace that was really already here in my life. I just had to uncover it.
What does God's joy and grace look like in a just regular, non-ambitious, not hyper-ambitious, let me say it that way, What does grace look like?
Grace, to me, is in my family. Grace is in my husband. Grace is in my stepchildren, because the 3 of them are just like their father in that, they've lost their mother. They lost her at a very young age. They were 9 and 7, and they still, even as little children, they had great joy in everyday things. There wasn't an overwhelming sadness, this big cloud of sadness. It was a celebration. Every day with them was a celebration, and loving being together, loving each other. And I saw that every day with them, and then little by little was able to see that and to really long to be in that community and to grow into a bigger community. Our church community was also something that became very important to me.
For Discovering Faith, I'm John Feaster.
This is Judy Zarek here to wrap up this edition of ACR Presents Disciples Called to Witness. In the preface to the bishop's document on the new evangelization, they say that the new evangelization strives to engage our culture and to help us draw our inspiration from the gospel. When I hear this, I'm reminded of a History Channel series called The Bible that aired recently on cable. They featured stories of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation in a docudrama type of format. There were things that I liked and things I didn't like about it. For instance, listening to the British accents sometimes bugged me a bit, and I had to get over the fact that I think they cast a man that isn't very Middle Eastern looking to me to play the part of Jesus. But historically, they were probably pretty accurate, and they stayed true to the essence of the Bible. What I liked best about it was that it gave me more to ponder and recall when I hear these stories read in our liturgy on Sundays. The nuances of the portrayal by the actors gave depth and dimension to the characters in the Bible that can sometimes just be names. Movies, theater shows, radio programs, whatever media you prefer, I think can do what the bishops are calling us to do, to engage our culture and draw our inspiration from the gospel. The shows don't always have to be overtly religious like the Bible, but can be more subtle like Les Miserables. Whatever the format, whatever the story, if we're proclaiming the good news through it, we're answering our baptismal call. And that's a good thing. You can find ACR archive programs and more on the web at productions.franciscanmedia.org, where you can contact us and also meet our production team. Sharon Cross, John Feaster, Ron Riegler, Chris Holmes, Kim Wessendarp, and our executive producer, Matt Wielgas. Music for our program was composed and arranged by Bobby Fisher. I'm Judy Zarek. Join me next time for another edition of American Catholic Radio Presents Disciples Called to Witness.
American Catholic Radio, Disciples Called to Witness, is produced by Franciscan Media, a ministry of the Franciscan Friars of Cincinnati, Ohio. Production is made possible by
the University of Dayton's virtual learning community for faith formation, bringing quality and trusted online learning to your fingertips. Get started today. Go to vlc.udayton.edu or call 1-888-300-8436.
American Catholic Radio, Disciples Called to Witness, is also sponsored by listeners like you. Please visit our website where you can donate and find American Catholic Radio archive programs as well as other resources. franciscanmedia.org.
This program was brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg and the Catholic Communication Campaign. Visit us on the web at hbgdiocese.org.